entertainment correspondent for the Black News Channel. And today we are hosting this half hour with Nat Geo and Cosmos Possible Worlds. We have a big treat. We are joined by Courteney Monroe. She is the president of National Geographic Global Television Networks, and Ann Druyan. She is the creator, director, writer, executive producer, pretty much jack of all trades with Cosmos Possible Worlds. Ladies, thank you so much for joining us. There's a lot to discuss, but first, let's take a look at the trailer.
We were hunters and foragers. The frontier was everywhere. We were bounded only by the earth and the ocean and the sky. The open road still softly calls, like a nearly forgotten song of childhood. Despite our limitations and fallibilities, we humans are capable of greatness. How far will our nomadic species have wandered by the end of the next century and the next millennium? Who will we become in the far future?
Nice. So Ann and Courteney, I want to ask both of you, you are both powerhouse women, but how do you maintain the legacy while also keeping the content fresh for a modern audience?
What we try to do is tell stories that are truthful. And, I find that if there's a nucleus of truth in what you're saying, you don't have to worry about the winds of change. That's the beautiful thing about not lying, is that years later and even decades later, you can still hold your head up high and say, wow, that was right. And so, as a woman, I'm so thrilled that National Geographic has given me the chance at age 71, when I didn't get to finish a sentence in a meeting until I was about 35. Come from a world in which women were not heard or respected. And National Geographic has given me a chance twice to lead a team of 1,000 artists, craftspeople, technicians, engineers, to make this season and the previous season of Cosmos. And I think it's a real tribute to National Geographic and their approach to programming that I had this opportunity, for which I'm so grateful. Really the best of partners.
Well, I would echo that and say we'd be crazy not to want to be in business with the brilliant Ann Druyan and the team that she led. And I would echo, it is a challenge and a great responsibility to sort of lead these beloved brands. And I would say both National Geographic and Cosmos are beloved brands around the world. So, it's a great responsibility to, ensure that you maintain the quality and distinctiveness and, really defy consumer expectations of those brands. but also move from sort of reverence to relevance. That's sort of how we think about it at National Geographic, which is, when you tell people that you work at National Geographic, when I tell people, the response is always amazing. Like, oh my God, you work at National Geographic. That's incredible. And that's because this brand is, been trusted and beloved, and known for truth and authenticity, as Anne said, for 133 years. But we really have been focused on moving this brand from reverence to relevance, and being along for the Cosmos journeys with Anne have been a big part of that, which is building a must-have, must-watch National Geographic with really bold, distinctive, authentic, premium content. Really, really ambitious, and Anne is so creatively ambitious, and I think through innovation and really creatively ambitious storytelling with the most spectacular technology, sort of that's how you keep your content relevant for modern audiences. So
Courteney, you just mentioned responsibility, and it's interesting because science is under a microscope right now and it's being politicized. So how do you handle that responsibility to be an advocate for science?
Yeah, look, I think that the way we think about it at National Geographic, deepening people's understanding of the world and their role in it is and has always been core to National Geographic. And we have always been on the side of science, and we've always been on the side of facts. And from our perspective, although science, is certainly politicized in today's world, there's nothing political about the truth from our perspective. So we stay very true to science and facts, and you're exactly right. I think the responsibility has never been greater, because there's never been a more important, more relevant time to promote science literacy and scientific facts and perspective than right now. So it's a real responsibility, but it's just been core to who we are. We just stay true to our DNA. And, as Anne said at the top, sort of, as long as you do that, I think you're not led astray. So.
Mm-hmm. And Anne, what about you when you're writing the Cosmos? What responsibility do you feel, if any?
I feel an enormous responsibility, but also an enormous privilege, because problems that we face right now, the horrendous effects of climate change, which will affect all of our lives and our children and grandchildren's lives, as well as the global pandemic. You can take a magic marker to the weather maps. You can fire the climate scientists when they deliver the bad news. You can lie and distort as much as you want to. Nature will not be deceived. And so, if you have a global pandemic, who are you going to call? The only way out of this is using our scientific knowledge and making sure that that scientific knowledge belongs to each and every one of us. It's the democratization of this information. And I have to say that this spring has given me so much hope to see such widespread awakening on the part of people, not because of a single charismatic leader, but in the hearts and minds of people who have denied and avoided reality in so many different forms for so long. That's hope-giving. And so, for me, the idea of Cosmos, and for Carl Sagan originally, was that this information belongs to every single one of us. It's our birthright, and the more widely distributed it is, the better chance we have of meeting these challenges, of enduring and even flourishing.
You were venturing a little into politics, and we're going to come back to that later. But for now, I want to ask Courteney, you've been at the helm of National Geographic since 2014. Talk about what's happening at the network, because National Geographic, you're really on a hot streak. So how did that come about, and what's your plan?
Thank you for saying that. Yes, it's been an incredibly exciting time to lead this brand at this time. So, about 4 years ago is really when we initiated some big transformational change, and we established a much bigger vision for ourselves. Really to ensure that we lived up to the promise and expectations that people have of this brand. So we started to pursue kind of what I would call a fewer, bigger, better creative strategy in terms of our content and programming, really focused on quality, distinctiveness, and creative ambition, as I said. So, we've set our sights on becoming the world's leading destination for premium factual storytelling. And I think Cosmos is very emblematic of that strategy for sure. So, and I think there's so many outlets, there's so much competition, there's so much choice, such an explosion of choice that consumers have. But exceptional content inside vital brands they win the day. And that is our focus. We have this incredibly vital, relevant brand. So we're focused on creating really distinctive, really exceptional content that is perceived as worth paying for. In order to create that content, we are working with the very best storytellers in the business and among them. And this strategy and this shift of the past couple of years has really led to an entirely new breed of programming. So documentary films like the Oscar-winning Free Solo, and big, science documentary series like Cosmos and One Strange Rock from Darren Aronofsky, personality-driven series from the likes of Gordon Ramsay, as well as big premium fact-based scripted drama like our Emmy-winning franchise Genius from Imagine Entertainment. So really big, really bold, really exciting stories that are entertaining with real scale and scope, but in the end are truly aligned with the core of who we are at National Geographic. So that's really what this journey has been about. And it's been really, really fun and humbling to lead this brand during this time of tremendous change.
Mm-hmm. With Genius, you have attracted some amazing talent. Has it been difficult to get some of these folks on board?
It actually hasn't. I mean, I would say 5 or 6 years ago when we started this, I definitely went on a charm offensive in the creative community, because we just weren't the first port of call for the likes of Ron Howard and Brian Grazer and Darren Aronofsky and Jeffrey Rush and others. So, but in the end, I think that the sell was not hard, because I think number one, always goes back to the power of the National Geographic brand and our belief in the power of storytelling to change the world, which again, I think Anne is a perfect example of that with Cosmos. And I think that's a really powerful message to people in the creative community. I think also the reach of our platform. We have a massive and unrivaled reach of our portfolio. Our television business is distributed in over 450 million homes around the world. Our magazine, our iconic magazine, is still read by over 50 million people every month. We are the #1 brand in social media. We have more followers on Instagram than Justin Bieber. So that's reassuring, restores my faith in the universe.
I want to live in.
Exactly, right. And I think so, and we're just not in the tonnage game in terms of the choices we make of the stories we want to tell. Again, it's a fewer, bigger, better. So when we get behind a story, or choose to tell a story, with incredible talent, we harness the full power of our portfolio to distribute and to market and to promote and to, create the best versions of those stories. So I feel incredibly honored that we have become a port of call for such incredible talent. But I really credit, the brand and our strategy in doing that.
Okay, well said. And I want to ask you a little bit more about Cosmos, because there were more than 30 years, the original Cosmos, hosted by your late husband and creative partner, Carl Sagan, and then it came back in 2014. So what did it take to bring it back, and how difficult was that?
Well, it was difficult for the first few years, starting around 2008. Steve Soder, who was our original co-writer, and I began working on a new cosmos. And it took a couple of years to find the network, the home, that would not only give us enough money to make a transporting cinematic experience, but also to give the creative control that was necessary. And we sort of wandered from, to the usual suspects, but it wasn't until I met Seth MacFarlane and he brought me to Fox and Nat Geo that I was able to have the wherewithal to do this series that I dreamed of doing. And I'd like to say also that Brandon Baraka has been my collaborator on both of these seasons. And that's been a great part of the joy of doing it. But so it really, once you have a platform such as National Geographic that understands what you're trying to do and then moves heaven and earth to get you the resources to be able to pull it off, that's more than half the battle. That's the whole battle. And so that was really, I don't mean to really gush about Nat Geo, but I just feel that, it's, if you want to do science-based entertainment, which is making the case for science and for so many other things, and telling the stories of our ancestors and of the great scientists who are not the household names. They're people you've never heard of, but they were willing to stand up to power, even to accept torture and death, because it mattered to them what's true. Now, in my view, right now, nothing matters more to our species than an urgent grasp of reality, coming to grips with reality, not listening to the people who lie to us, because we as a species have a terrible history. We lie to each other, we lie to everyone. So we really need that error-correcting mechanism, that means of winnowing out the BS, which science is in its purest form, just a methodology for finding out what's real. And so to present the case for science is also to present the case for our future. And I hope that when people watch Cosmos or read the Cosmos Possible Worlds book, they're feeling a new sense of hope, because I feel that hope, and it's reality-based, it's evidence-based, it's based on who we are as a species and what we've been able to overcome and what life has been able to overcome in the last 4.5 billion years.
I think if I can just jump in, I think what's so exciting and brilliant about Cosmos and what Anne has done is that it's, we're talking so much about science because in the end, that's what the storytelling at its core is about. But it's not just about science. It's about history. It's about culture. It's about arts and literature, and it's imagination and it's wonder. And it's all wrapped up in one of the most visually spectacular pieces of programming you could watch. So right out of the gate, first, it's just this wildly entertaining ride. Everything that Anne just said is inherent and interwoven into the storytelling. But, the only way you're going to get people there is if you wow them and you inspire them and you fill them with awe and wonder. And that's what this series, I think, does so brilliantly. And that's what we try to do with all of our storytelling. Because if if it feels like homework, if it feels like medicine, no one's going to want to watch it, right? So I think what Anne and the team did so brilliantly is just make it this incredibly spectacular and thrilling ride, but underpinning that, is the truth and a whole bunch of information that most people have no idea about.
And that's interesting. I learned so much watching this series about science, history. How big is the research team?
It's very big, because we had a dozen scientists from many different disciplines, advising us at every turn. We could pick their brains. We could ask them questions. And then we had the wonderful Andre Bormanis, making sure that the science was right. And of course, Neil is a scientist. And so, he would also vet the scripts. And, once in a while we messed up and he would point it out to us and we were so grateful. Yes, getting the science right has been the most critically important thing to me, because remember, I am walking in such big shoes, Carl Sagan's shoes. And, it would be mortifying and horrifying to me if I ever did something in Cosmos that wasn't true to his values and what he stood for.
How do you decide what topics to focus on with each episode?
Well, at first I thought of an overarching theme, which was, I figured that our audience knows, and this is a global audience, 180 countries, thanks to Nat Geo, but our audience knows the deep trouble we're in. Everyone knows it. So in this season of Cosmos, I didn't want to pull people by the lapels and say we're all going to die. I wanted to dig deep into our history, to find the stories of heroic searchers, our ancestors, nameless people in some cases, in other cases, people you've never heard of, but who really changed the world. And I wanted to show them as an example of what we humans are, what we have inside us. As Carl says so beautifully in that magnificent voice at the beginning of episode 301, the third season, we humans are capable of greatness. Carl understood better than most people how flawed he was and all of us are. But he really believed in our capacity to meet these challenges. And so, we'll take you to the 2039 World's Fair, to the future, to a hopeful future, not as pie in the sky and this is how it's going to be, but it's that title, Possible Worlds. That was, for me, the template for the whole series. The possible worlds that circle other suns, the exoplanets, but most profoundly, the possible world that this Earth can become if we get our act together.
The series mixes a lot of different visual elements, from reenactments to animation. How do you approach it from a visual standpoint?
Well, that was the funnest part of it, was sitting in a room with Brandon Baraka for over a year, just the two of us in a white room filled with whiteboards so we could write on the walls. And we had hundreds of stories that I've been collecting, because I'm kind of a hunter-gatherer of stories. And Brandon has a much better handwriting than I do, and he's taller, so he could reach higher. So he would write on the board, and we had our sort of shorthand for each story. And slowly but surely, over the period of a year, we had winnowed, we had sorted the stories into 13 what we hope are coherent episodes, and each with its own dramatic arc. And so, it was a process which is actually some of the greatest times that I've had, just sitting there and thinking together. I love collaborating much more than writing on my own, because I know it's always going to be better with another brain. And also, if I go off the deep end, sometimes, I need somebody to sort of set me straight. But Brandon was a delight. The process was wonderful.
Courtney, will we be seeing more Cosmos?
I think that's maybe even more of a question for Anne. I think it's going to be a little while before you can get back in the room collaborating with people, though, right? I was thinking, as you talked about your teams of hundreds, and it's just a small room with Brandon, it's like, oh, hopefully we can all do that soon.
Well, actually, I do. I know I have a season 4 in me, and I know what it is. And I've been sitting here in Ithaca with Sam Sagan, my son, and talking to Brandon on the phone. And yeah, I hope to do another one because I think there's one more I want to do.
Okay. I'm really curious with the host wraps. There were some stunning locations. Was that shot on a green screen, or did you go on location?
We did. We went on location. We went to, of course, there is plenty of green screen because the Ship of the Imagination and the Cosmic Calendar and some of the, the recurring motifs require that. So we spent 2 months, 3 months shooting in Santa Fe on a big, gigantic soundstage, which was lots of fun. And then we did go to China, to Europe, to locations around the United States, and various other places. And for our gigantic 2039 New York World's Fair, we shot in Spain for that one.
Nice. Courteney, you mentioned all the competition out there. So what is happening with Nat Geo and the streaming wars? How does that factor in?
Well, we are incredibly well positioned because last year we became part of the Walt Disney Company. And at the end of last year, I guess it was November, they launched Disney Plus, and we are one of the 5 brands that has kind of a designated home on that platform. So it's Disney, Marvel, Pixar, Lucas, and National Geographic. So, we are not going at the streaming wars alone. We have the unbelievable might of the Walt Disney Company. And some of our content also, anything that is from Nat Geo that maybe is a little more hard hitting in the storytelling is on Hulu if it's not appropriate for the audiences on Disney Plus. But, I feel incredibly grateful that we are part of a winning company with a winning strategy and a winning platform that has already surpassed all expectations. I think how you win on these platforms in general, though, is, look, exceptional content is platform agnostic. That's the bottom line. I don't think all of these streaming services are going to win. I don't think you have to be the only one that wins, because I don't think only one will win, but you do have to be part of a streaming platform that is a must buy. It doesn't have to be the only buy, but it has to be a must buy. And I think Disney Plus has already proven that it's a must buy with, exceptional content from these 5 unbelievable brands that consumers believe is worth paying for. So that's really our focus, is creating content that is worthy of standing alongside those giant other brands, and that is going to drive, consumer engagement. We're still running a very, very vibrant, traditional linear television business, as Anne said, in 180 countries, but obviously the future is streaming, and we're very, very well positioned to win there.
I do have to throw in one question from the audience. People want to know, we are in the midst of tremendous change in this country right now in terms of racial equality. What are you doing to address that and make sure that National Geographic's workforce represents the makeup of the country?
Yeah, we are in the midst of a tremendous amount of change, much overdue change. And I will say, just for me personally, this has been a time of incredible self-reflection. And it's sort of now all we're talking about and thinking about. We've made some important strides in this area previously, but there's a level of focus and commitment to ensuring that, we are diverse and inclusive in every aspect of our business, to our own staff and teams, to the creative partners externally that we work with, and certainly to make sure we are the most diverse and inclusive television business that we can be for our audience. We're this big global brand made up of many different colors, and we need to reflect that. So we've made important strides. We've certainly tackled the topic, of race directly in our magazine and in some of our programming, but our work is far from complete. So we're putting lots of plans in place to change the complexion of our teams, providing more opportunities for diverse voices, writers, photographers, filmmakers who can bring more of that diverse perspective and authenticity. We're launching different apprenticeship programs to help create a pipeline of more people of color in natural history and documentary filmmaking. And we're really looking at every single story that we tell across all our platforms, and filtering it through a new lens. So, you know, again, I think we've made a lot of progress. We certainly have a lot more work to do, and this is much needed change. So I think we're at a really important inflection point, and I'm grateful to a lot of brave voices at National Geographic who are speaking up and helping us steer through this time.
All right. Well, that is going to do it for us. Unfortunately, we are out of time. Thank you so much to Nat Geo, to Courteney Monroe and Ann Druyan for taking the time to discuss Cosmos Possible Worlds. It's been a great conversation. I'm Anita Bennett, and thank you to all of you out there for watching.
Thank you so much. Bye, Ann.